Jacob Rees-Mogg, newly promoted by Boris Johnson to be Leader of the House of Commons. Evening, Jacob. One of the most radical...
Good evening, and I'm sorry I'm not with you in the studio, which I promised to be ages ago, and obviously events have overtaken me, so my apologies.
It's been a busy day for you and for Boris Johnson. Now, we have rarely seen an overhaul of government quite as radical as this. Are you a fan of what the Prime Minister has done?
I think the Prime Minister was very clear early on that he needed a cabinet that was committed to leaving on the 31st of October. But actually, quite a number of members of the cabinet supported Remain in the referendum. So it's not a purge of Remainers against bringing in Leavers. It is simply people who are willing to accept that we must leave on the 31st and a feeling that a new Prime Minister needs a different team.
Well, all the sort of key positions are filled by absolutely passionate believers in Brexit. Dominic Cummings back, effectively as the sort of chief executive of the operation. Do you believe it yourself that this team can negotiate a new deal with the EU? Many say that this is a preparation really for a no-deal Brexit.
But can I divide up your question? Because you say
please.
Passionate Leavers in all the key positions, but Sajid Javid and Liz Truss, who've both got very important positions, are both backed Remain during the referendum. Dominic Cummings is obviously very important because he is very capable at policy, was instrumental in Michael Gove's education reforms, and is also a very effective campaigner, as he showed during his leadership of Vote Leave. So yes, his appointment is very important, but I think to characterise it as a sort of Vote Leave coup is a mistake, and is forgetting that the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the International Trade Secretary were both Remainers.
Now, you have this hugely important job now as Leader of the House. One of your really important tasks will be to try and persuade the House to back whatever kind of Brexit Boris Johnson comes up with. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, isn't it?
Well, it would be absurd to pretend it would be easy, considering that the Prime Minister's outgoing Prime Minister's deal was initially defeated by 230 votes. But we will have to see what the new Prime Minister gets in terms of an arrangement from Brussels, and to see whether people prefer that to leaving without any arrangement at all. So that will be the choice that Parliament faces.
What is your own belief, if it is looking like a no-deal Brexit? Do you think you've got any chance of getting that through the House of Commons?
Well, the House of Commons, it has to be remembered, has already passed the Article 50 Act and the Withdrawal Act. So the law, passed by the House of Commons, agreed by the House of Commons, is that we leave on the 31st of October with or without a deal. So just for the status quo to maintain means that we leave without a deal unless a deal is passed. So when people say the House of Commons will stop it, they're rather forgetting that the House of Commons has already agreed to it.
But, loads of your colleagues tell me that they are going to work night and day to stop a no-deal Brexit, even to the point of voting against Boris Johnson and this government in a vote of no confidence. Are you frightened of a general election or, fought on the basis of Brexit?
Well, I think if you're interviewing any of those people, you should raise with them the question of how they managed to stand on a manifesto that said no deal was better than a bad deal, how they managed to be part of a government that was making no deal preparations. Was that all fantasy? Was that all something they thought was dreadful and went along with for the sake of a quiet life? Or have they suddenly changed their minds because they're no longer in the cabinet? I think these are serious questions for people of that turn of mind, and you have to ask them, why did they vote for 2 acts of Parliament, which mean we leave with or without a deal now on the 31st of October? Was it just that they hoped a deal might be found? I think people have to be consistent in how they behave.
Jacob, obviously, I'm going to take your advice. I've got Rory Stewart, who's resigned from the Cabinet precisely on this issue because he opposes a no deal on the show tonight, and I will put that question to him. But you didn't actually answer my question of whether you personally would be frightened of fighting a general election on the platform of delivering a no-deal Brexit.
Oh, no, I certainly wouldn't be frightened of the British people that, as the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson has pointed out, we should trust the people. He pointed out so clearly he is the servant of the people as the new Prime Minister, and I think in their wisdom that if these circumstances arose, then they would back leaving the European Union a second and a third time.
And so when we look at what Boris Johnson said today on the steps of Downing Street, for example, pledges to recruit a lot more police, more money for schools, more money for road and rail, much more money for the health service. He wants to deliver on that 350 million quid that he put on the side of the bus during the campaign. These all look like the kind of goodies that a Prime Minister offers ahead of a general election.
I don't think that's fair, actually. I think these decisions have been come to because they are absolutely needed, that social care has been a serious problem now for many years, and Boris is grasping the nettle. He's dealing with a problem. He's going to come up with a solution for it. We've got rising crime, particularly in London. Boris is coming up with a solution for it that can be implemented pretty much straight away, and that just shows that we've got a leader who wants to get things done, and I wouldn't see everything through the prism of the next election.
Now, I've always thought of you, Jacob, as somebody who, to use the sort of jargon, would think of themselves as economically dry. Where's the money coming from to pay for all this?
Well, I am economically dry, but the annual deficit is much lower than it was. It's come down significantly. You've seen with corporation tax that actually having a tax cut has led to more revenue. You've seen a revision by the ONS recently of an extra 0.5% of GDP because they were undercalculating it. So there is money around selectively, as long as the money is spent prudently.
But the national debt is still well over 80% of GDP. I would have imagined somebody like you would be nervous about a Prime Minister who might well push up that ratio of debt to the amount that we produce in this country.
I don't think anything he's proposing would push up the ratio of the national debt, and that after 9-10 years of austerity, that you can't continue austerity forever, and the national debt will decline on the current forecasts, and there is some headroom as well.
Now, finally, one of the things that some of your colleagues have been shocked by is how ruthless Boris Johnson has been in remaking the cabinet. 2/3 gone, either sacked or resigned before they were pushed out. It's, the mood on your back benches is going to be bloody. He's going to be facing terrible opposition, isn't he, when Parliament reassembles after summer holidays?
Well, inevitably there will be a reaction, as there always is, to any reshuffle. I think it's hard to say the mood on the backbenches was enormously sunny beforehand. I don't think it will be very greatly different.
And so, just to finish off, what is your central projection at the moment? General election in the autumn?
The question on a general election is about actually a vote of confidence, and the question there for Conservatives is, do they want to take the risk of Jeremy Corbyn? It is clearly not the policy of the government to bring on a general election, and it's worth remembering that since the Fixed Term Parliament Act 2011, the Prime Minister no longer has the ability to call a general election willy-nilly. That was taken away from him, and therefore I don't see that being a government objective, but it's impossible to rule out looking at the parliamentary arithmetic.
Jacob, as always, an absolute joy to see you. Come and join us again
thank you.
soon, and good luck.